Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, is one of the most destitute places on Earth, and they seem to be stuck in poverty. You don't see that kind of poverty in Europe or North America, and Asia only has a few. Northern Africa and Southern Africa are doing well too. Only tropical Africa is trapped in poverty. But why? One of the primary problems is their low food productivity, which is usually due to dependence on irregular rainfall instead of irrigation, as well as weathered soils and degraded land. The second problem is that they have a heavy burden of diseases, lethal diseases that can be controlled in temperate regions. Third is physical isolation, since most of them are landlocked, so they have no sea-based trade. But even with seaports, countries can face extreme transport problems, like mountainous terrain, large inland population, and overall remoteness from world trade routes. Africa was the only major developing region with a negative growth in per capita during 1980 to 2000. Their health condition is one of the worst on the planet. The non-tropical ends of Africa are much richer than the tropical, since they grow temperate crops, invulnerable to the worst of malaria, and the north enjoys the EU markets, while the south has vast deposits of gold and diamonds per capita. Africa is suffering because of very high transport cost and small market size, low productivity agriculture, adverse geopolitics, and a very slow diffusion of technology from abroad. They have a high disease burden from HIV to AIDS, malaria, and other endemic diseases. They also have the most malignant human malaria species. Africans live in the interior of the continent, and their transportation cost is high. The Sahara cuts their potential trade with Europe, and the small market size also doesn't help. Small developing countries with no access to global trade tend to grow more slowly than large internal markets, or countries with easy access to trade like Singapore. They tend to live away from the coast because of better soils, more rain in highland regions, lower burden of malaria, and centuries of slave trade made it dangerous for them to be there. This problem wouldn't be so severe if their rivers were navigable, but they are not. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith recognized that transport is fundamental for prosperity. For example, the Baltic and Adriatic Seas can be used by Europe, the Black and Mediterranean Seas can be used by Europe and Asia, and the Gulf of Arabia, Persia, India, Bengal, and Siam can be used by Asia. Africa, however, has none of them, so they need roads for high-intensity modern trade to happen. But it is costly and hard to maintain. Africans live in places with few rivers for irrigation and lack large alluvial plains like in South and East Asia. They have the lowest share of irrigated cropland in any major region in the developing world. The rain is erratic, and due to high temperatures, the land is subject to evapotranspiration. Since transportation is costly, they can't afford much fertilizer, since it is no longer cost-effective by the time they cover the cost of bringing them to their farms and farm output to market. So, they are forced to farm in soils that are depleted of nutrients and without modern methods of water management. Africa suffered brutally for almost 5 centuries at the hands of the European powers. At the end of the colonial period, they were left with little infrastructure and education, less than post-colonial Asia. The borders are drawn without regard to ethnicity, and the differences in colonial language fragmented parts of Africa. Independence, ironically, was followed by manipulation as proxies for the Cold War and exploitation of the resources by rich countries. Even when not exploited, rich countries were really not helping them much. Africa is also not a strategic focus for the US or Europe either, since it is too far and negligible as a market. Africa is the world's great laggard in technological advancement, agriculture, and health. For example, most countries experienced the Green Revolution in the 1970s to 1990s, a surge in crop yields as a result of scientific breeding that produced high-yield varieties. However, Africa's uptake is the lowest in the developing world, since the crops aren't well suited in places like Africa, especially due to its condition of rain-fed, fertilizer-scarce, subhumid, and arid tropics. They're more suited in places like Asia and Latin America. Also, high-yield varieties research focused more on wheat, maize, and paddy rice. While Africa does produce maize, they produce very little wheat and paddy rice. Instead, they focus more on sorghum, millet, and tubers. Combined with the cost, geography, and technology, Africa is the only major region to have recorded a slight decline in food production per capita during 1980 to 2000. These problems are rooted in geography, and desperation can force the poor to further deplete the resources of the environment for them to survive. Moreover, they are easily affected by climate change. But geography is not the only problem. Political consequences can be equally stark. In states, scarcity, and civil strife in the developing world, Colin Call described two main paths where poverty can raise the likelihood of violent conflict and collapse of the state into lawlessness. First, when poverty causes desperation and the government is unable to respond, the group may self-help by fighting for resources with other groups, like what happened in Somalia between 1991 and 2006. If the government takes a side, it can be violent to favor one group against the other, like the Rwandan genocide. The situation is highly complex, and with the coming threats of climate change and other conflicts in the region, it's hard to say for sure what the future holds for them. But that shouldn't stop us from trying to improve. These difficulties can be overcome by focusing investment on raising food security and agricultural activity by giving farmers high-quality fertilizers, high-yield seeds, small-scale water management systems, and livestock management. It could result in a green revolution. For diseases, many of them can be treated. What is needed is a supply of crucial commodities and availability of primary health units in rural areas and trained village health workers. Infrastructure like all-weather roads, power grids, wider cellular phone coverage, and even broadband internet services obtained through fiber optic cables or satellite connections can link remote villages to regional and world markets, enabling them to earn so much more cash and income through sales of agricultural communities, processed goods, and services. Lastly, what they desperately need is very strong leadership and a capable public administration at all levels of government, because no matter how much money or resources you have, if the governing bodies don't know what to do and how to handle it, it's essentially useless. Thank you for watching. If you like what I do, and if you want to support me directly, you can do so on my Patreon, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, life has been really busy, and I can't focus too much on making videos because I have college things to do. It's annoying, really, but I have to do what I have to do. This video about poverty was written almost 1 or 2 years ago. I even forgot I have it on my laptop, and given how occupied I am right now, I'm pretty glad I stumbled upon it. Hope you like this one even though I feel like it's not much. I'll try to finish the next essay as fast as I can. Until then, see you, and thank you for watching.